the Gitrog monster versus Anafenza the Foremost with one card in hand, but we do have Miri's Guile, which we might be able to put lands onto the top with. If there's no lands in the top 3 cards of the library, then we have no chance this game. And if that's the case, then you're probably not seeing this game anyway. We are on the draw at least, so that might get us into another land. It'll at least get us closer to one. A tap land from our opponent. That is... yeah, that's just a tapped white land in this case. And because we managed to get into a forest last turn, that was a really good draw. If there aren't any lands within the top 3 cards of our library here, we can shuffle up our library with a Windswept Heath. And would you look at that? They are terrible draws. But holding on to a Vampiric Tutor isn't awful. We can go for a land with that. So we'll just shuffle things up there with the Windswept Heath. And I don't think we're going to go for Vampiric Tutor, although we could go for Azusa, couldn't we? Because we have a fetch and Ramunap. It'll take a few turns to set it up, but if our opponent isn't doing much, then that's something we could go for. So let's shuffle the library. We'll grab a Bayou. And then we'll shuffle up again with a Vampiric Tutor. And we'll put Azusa on top. When Azusa and Ramunap are in play together and there's a fetch in the graveyard, it means that you can play a bunch of fetches from your graveyard straight into play. Yeah, so let's go Oracle, Azusa and Thespian Stage. Luckily we got into a land in the top 2 other than Azusa, so let's go for the Thespian Stage into Ramunap. And now we can play the Windswept Heath from our graveyard thanks to Ramunap. We just have to hope that the Abzan player doesn't have any removal in hand, which is a big if, because Abzan is particularly good at removing permanents. Anafenza the Foremost is a 4/4 in 3 mana, Abzan. And when it attacks, you put a plus counter on another tapped creature you control. If a non-token creature an opponent owns would die, or a creature card not on the battlefield would be put into an opponent's graveyard, you exile it instead. So that's kind of like an anti-reanimation effect. We are going for Azusa here. Wouldn't mind getting into Oracle either. That's another land drop that we can make on each of our turns. So it's time to start ramping here. We get to play and crack a fetch 3 times here. And I think we will shock in an Overgrown Tomb, because I want black mana for the Maelstrom Pulse, because I think we'll actually get rid of Vryn Nightmare. This might be some kind of stacks deck that our opponent's made. And there we go, nicely ramping there with those 2 creatures. Oh, and we can't cast that, can we? Because, yeah, forget that then. Okay, in that case, we'll just swing in with Ramunap and leave our opponent to it. If we can ramp out enough, it might actually, on second thoughts, be worth playing round the Vryn Nightmare anyway. As Bob Ross would say, that may be a happy accident. Okay, Suspension Field. Exile a creature with toughness 3 or greater until this leaves the battlefield, so we can actually go for Maelstrom Pulse onto that instead. And then our opponent swings for 2 in the air. I think I'd quite like a Marsh Flats, as good as Realms Uncharted is. In fact, Realms Uncharted is better, isn't it? Because we can actually play stuff from our graveyard with that. Yeah, so let's go for drawing into the Realms Uncharted. We look for 3 land cards from our library with this, and then our opponent gives one of them to us. So first off, we need to blow up the Suspension Field. And then we can go for our trick of playing a fetch a few times from our graveyard. Only got 3 forests left. And this is the second land drop of the turn. Then we'll probably go for Realms Uncharted after this. That will cost us 4 mana, thanks to our opponent and their Wingmare. Now, what 3 lands do we want? We can go for Dark Depths because we have the Thespian Stage. Cabal Coffers and Urborg I think is good. Yeah, we'll go for those three and see which one our opponent wants to give us. Dark Depths will give us a 20/20 Flying Indestructible when we copy it with the Thespian Stage for 2 mana. So probably just going for Dark Depths this turn actually, no matter which card they give us. It doesn't actually matter because we have Ramunap in play. They decide to give us Urborg, so we'll just go in for the Dark Depths straight from the graveyard. And then if we get down Urborg next turn, which we certainly will, then the Dark Depths will actually be able to tap for mana before we get rid of it. For anyone who doesn't know that combo, Thespian Stage becomes a copy of a land for 2 mana. And the Dark Depths, when it dies with no counters on it, then we get that 20/20 Flying Indestructible. So when this becomes a copy of the Dark Depths, it's a legendary land, and we have to choose which one to keep. We decide to kill off the one that doesn't have any counters on it, and therefore we'll get the token. Limited resources. When it enters the battlefield, each player chooses 5 lands they control and sacks the rest. Players can't play lands as long as there are 10 or more lands on the field. That is really good against a lands matter deck. So we'll just get rid of 5 lands we control here, and they are all the forests. Oh, we were choosing which ones to keep. How annoying. Ugh, I hate when stuff like that happens. Can't play lands. 10 or more lands are on the battlefield. There's 5, 6, 7, 8. So we can play a couple of lands. And we can get down Bane of Progress if we go for Urborg and Cabal Coffers. I think that's a good idea, actually. Yeah, we could have gone for that token if I'd clicked that right. Yes, we'll use the Mirri's Guile's ability. We want a Demonic Tutor in hand out of all of those. Alright, so let's go for the Cabal Coffers from the graveyard, Urborg into our hand. We will tap the Cabal Coffers for a bunch of black mana. Go for our commander. And then we go in for the Bane of Progress. We'll lose our Mirri's Guile, but we're just doing this to get rid of that limited resources. And then we play the Thespian Stage and the Dark Depths. And we get an extra land drop, by the way, thanks to the Gitrog monster. And now it's just a case of swinging in with the Ramunap again. And now we'll try again next turn to go for this Dark Depths combination. Probably just sacrificing a forest to the Gitrog monster at the beginning of the turn. And we'll be able to go for a few activations with Windswept Heath. They will draw us cards because Gitrog will see that the lands are dying. What have we got here? Bonds of Faith. Bonds of Faith. Enchant creature +2/+2. Otherwise it can't attack or block. Yeah, that's just one of those human tribal pacifisms, isn't it? So we'll just take 2 here. They've been pretty unlucky on the land, so this is obviously just going to be some kind of exhibition match for Gitrog. We can show you how that typically likes to work. Draw a card from Gitrog because it saw a land die. Windswept Heath to draw another card. Okay, another swamp. How many forests have we got left? Only 2. So we might as well go for another activation on that. And we get into Oracle of Muldiah. That card seems desperate to be played this game. Saw that at the beginning of the game. And we'll tap down the Dark Depths for mana into the Cabal Coffers. Thespian Stage can become a copy of Dark Depths. We choose which one we want to keep. We want to keep the one without any counters. The Gitrog monster sees that a land has died to the legendary rule. The Thespian Stage copy doesn't have any counters on it anymore, so we trade it in for a Merit Lage. And then we'll just play the Bayou. And the Thespian Stage, that can be a copy of Cabal Coffers. We'll get down Oracle of Muldiah and make another land with that. So while we were doing all this, actually, we could have cast Rampaging Baloths, couldn't we? Let's just play a Swamp from the hand. And that has landfall, 4/4 Beast. And I think it's safe to leave it like that, so let's just swing in with everything that we can. That's actually only 7 damage to our opponent, so we need to get moving with all this damage. They don't have double white, unfortunately. Okay, Defang, this just seems like some kind of aura build. Prevent all damage that would be dealt by it. That's a good pacifism effect. Okay, but I think it's time for us to win this one. We have played around enough. So we'll ditch a forest. That will draw us a card with Gitrog. Then we draw into one with the Beast Within. We'll Song of the Dryads. No, and our opponents decided to quit out there. We were just going to deal with the Vryn Wing Nightmare and then maybe tutor for something to get rid of the Defang and swing in with everything. I don't think we actually needed the 20 damage from Marit Lage, but that was my initial thought there. Yeah, Song of the Dryads would have gotten Vryn Wingmare out of the way, and then we could have swung in with everything for lethal. So it's a good game to our opponent. Hopefully you all enjoyed another game from the Gitrog monster. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching. The mirror match. The Gitrog monster versus the Gitrog monster. Well, we have a black source for that Vampiric Tutor, and if our opponent gets into any mana rocks, then we can blow them up with Rex Sage, so I think that's an okay hand. Start off with our tap land in Barren Moor, and just throw it back over to our opponent. The Gitrog monster is a 6/6 Frog Horror, a 5 mana Golgari commander with Death Touch. At the beginning of your upkeep, you sack it or a land. You may play an additional land on each of your turns, and whenever one or more lands is put into the graveyard from anywhere, you draw a card. I think Vampiric Tutor into a Sol Ring, maybe? Alright, a Dark Confidant. So they've obviously got some kind of low curve there. Okay, I think we might be getting to the point where we actually want to go for this Vampiric Tutor. I'm just not too sure what we want to grab with it. Yeah, we'll just get on with it and see what they reveal with the Dark Confidant. Okay, Liliana of the Veil. It's good to know that they've got one of those in hand, so they won't surprise us with it. This typically comes down and forces your opponent to sack a creature. I don't have this card. There's some of the more expensive cards that I don't have, and this is a good one for the Gitrog monster because you can discard a land, and Gitrog will see a land entering the graveyard and you'll end up drawing. They've gotten an Urborg down, so we've got all the black mana we need. We'll get rid of Cavern of Souls. And then in comes the Dark Confidant. Let's have a look with the Vampiric Tutor and see if we want to grab anything with that. Maybe just a Maelstrom Pulse to get rid of Liliana, because I don't see how else we're going to do it. It's not very flashy, but I think that might be our best bet. So we'll go for that. Maelstrom Pulse onto Liliana of the Veil. We'll play a land and throw it back over to our opponent. Down comes our opponent's Gitrog monster. They managed to get into an Ancient Tomb. And they also had Wasteland, so they could blow up our Barren Moor. So that is a pretty good hand our opponent has. Oh, and they've also gotten into an Ugin, so yeah, you can't really beat draws like this. I think it just means that we go for Damnation here and hope that we get into a land, but even if we do, we've still got Ugin to worry about. That usually comes down and just wipes the board. And a Primeval Titan. Yeah, I'm definitely uploading this video because I just think it's funny when your opponents have ridiculous hands. I mean, Wasteland, Liliana of the Vale, Bob, Ugin, Primetime, Ancient Tomb, Gitrog. Yeah, I mean, Gitrog's in the command zone, obviously, but and a Bojuka Bog against a graveyard deck. Yeah, this is just very, very amusing to me. We'll play it out as long as we can, though, but we have definitely lost this one. Get in for a Sky Shroud claim. We'll get both of our dual lands and throw it over to our opponent and take some hits from Primetime. They got a Cabal Coffers. Oh, and they must have gotten Bojuka. Yeah, so that wasn't that good a draw with Bojuka Bog. They must have gotten that with the Primeval Titan. They got Cabal Coffers as well. And they've just played a Blighted Fen, so that they can make us sacrifice a creature if we ever did manage to get our Gitrog into play. And then going for God's Eye, Gate to Reikai. When it's put into the graveyard from the battlefield, you get a Spirit. Alright, so that's a good one to sacrifice to Gitrog. And then a Command Beacon as well, just to knock the command attacks off of Gitrog. Down comes Ugin, most likely ticking up towards that limit break. You gain 7 life, draw 7 cards, and put 7 permanent cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Gaia's Cradle could not be a worse draw. Why don't we just go for Green Warden of Marasa, just for the sake of it. That will grab us back the Sky Shroud claim, and Green Warden of Marasa actually switches on the Gaia's Cradle. But they are going to use the Blighted Fen there to have us sacrifice a creature. We sacrifice the Green Warden of Marasa. We are not going to activate its ability, because there's nothing else for us to grab from the graveyard. So we won't exile the Green Warden of Marasa. Play the Gaia's Cradle. Oh, and it does tap for mana thanks to our opponent's Urborg, so it's not that bad. And a Dust Bowl as well. Wow. I don't think they... No, they didn't go for that. With Primeval Titan, these are the best draws I've ever seen anyone have with a Gitrog game. A Drownyard Temple. That's a land that reanimates itself. And then a Field of Ruin to blow up our... probably to blow up our Gaia's Cradle, because they're scared of what we're going to do with a Gaia's Cradle. Out comes Gitrog Monster again. And Ugin will get the limit break off next turn. Dust Bowl blows up the Gaia's Cradle like we said it would. And the Dust Bowl sacrifice the Drownyard Temple, and then they put 3 mana in to get it back out of the graveyard. Let's blow up our opponent's Ugin. They're not going to have too much fun at our expense. And then we'll go for the Sky Shroud claim that they know we have. Grab ourselves some forests that we can do nothing with, and we'll give our opponent every opportunity to just swing in. I will tap down to show them that we don't have anything. And our opponent very respectfully is just swinging in with their creatures here, so they're not wasting their own time or ours. And there we go, we got a good Gitrog game there. I had a bit of a squash match against another opponent earlier on. They were unlucky with their lands, so I think I will splice both of them together. One of me hammering someone, and one of me getting hammered. And one way or another, we actually got a good Gitrog game there, even if it wasn't our deck. It was the Gitrog Monster Mirror Match. I'm Tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.